Welcome to this lesson which gets you started with 3ds Max.
Hello and welcome to 3ds Max. Most of your commonly used commands will be found here in the main menu. And in the main toolbar here is where you'll find the most frequently used tools, including Move, Rotate, and Scale. The command panel here and the modeling ribbon here are where you can edit selected objects. Most properties are found in the Modify tab of the command panel, and you'll find that each viewport has its own menu to control that viewport's display. You can click with the right mouse button to reveal the Quad menu, which gives you convenient access to quite a few handy tools. You can learn more about importing content, editing geometry, making an animation, texturing surfaces using materials, and lighting and rendering in the other 1-minute movies. The next movie shows you how you can navigate your scene.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
To see selected objects close up, press Z. Pressing Z with nothing selected will fit the scene to the viewport. To orbit the view, hold the Alt key and drag with the middle mouse button. To pan the view, simply drag with the middle mouse button. To zoom the view, use the scroll wheel, or you can hold the Control key plus the Alt key and drag with the middle mouse button. When viewing your scene through a camera's point of view, the orbit and zoom controls on the mouse are disabled. The navigation controls in the app frame also change when using a camera viewport. The next movie shows you how to import, link, and Xref objects and scenes.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
For native Max files, instead of importing a file, the entire scene may be brought in as an externally referenced or Xref scene. An Xref scene appears in the current scene but cannot be edited. Xref scenes will update automatically when the source file changes. Unlike an Xref scene, an externally referenced object can be transformed or modified similar to other objects created within 3ds Max. When you modify an Xref object, 3ds Max won't edit or change the original reference object. Similar to Xref objects, DWG, FBX, and RVT files may be linked to update automatically through the File Link command. Updates to the original file do get passed on to 3ds Max, but changes to the model and 3ds Max will not affect the original file. The next movie shows you how to make sure you're using the right scale and units in your scene.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
When opening models into your scene, you may be alerted about a mismatch in system units. System units sets the scale of things in the scene. The system units also affect the precision of your scene. For best results, your system units should not be much smaller or too much larger than the elements in your scene. It is recommended that when sharing files, all parties use the same system units to avoid converting units, which can add time to the import process. Matching system units may not fit your workflow, in which case converting units on import may be required. By default, 3ds Max system units are set 2 inches. Unlike system units, the display units only affect how things are measured in the scene. The next movie shows you how to organize and inspect the objects in your scene.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
Use the Scene Explorer to locate and manage objects that are in your scene. All the objects in the scene may be found and selected here. Objects may also be filtered by type or by name. Newer objects appear at the top, but they may be sorted alphanumerically. You can also see the layers in your scene here. You can change some objects' properties at the layer level. Scene Explorers may be configured to show more properties. Properties for multiple objects can be edited all at once. The next movie shows you how to manipulate objects and the basics of selection and sub-object selection.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
The tools that change the position, size, and rotation of objects are here on the main toolbar. The keyboard shortcuts or hotkeys can be used to switch between tools. The manipulator tools are Move, Rotate, and Scale. Placement mode allows you to easily position objects onto surfaces. Select multiple objects in the view by dragging the mouse. What gets included depends on the mode you're in. In crossing mode, all objects that are even partially in the selection area will be included in that selection. In window mode, only objects that are fully inside the selection area will be selected. To select smaller parts of an object, it must first be an editable mesh, polygon, or spline. You can choose which sub-object level you want to work on by clicking the icon or clicking the hotkeys 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Control and click to select multiple objects or sub-objects. Alt and click to deselect multiple objects or sub-objects. To exit sub-object mode, click the active icon again or press 6. In the next movie, we will look more into how to edit objects.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
Most object properties can be found in the Modify tab of the Command Panel. These parameters are still adjustable after the object has been created in the Modify tab. Further changes may be made by applying modifiers to the object. Modifiers are available for many types of changes, and each modifier provides additional tools and parameters to affect that object. Reordering or muting modifiers will affect the end result. Modifiers expose components called sub-objects that offer additional controls. In the next movie, we will look at how to edit geometry edges, vertices, and polygons.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
Primitives must be made editable to affect individual sub-object elements, faces, edges, or points. Edit modifiers allow access to sub-objects, which can be controlled through additional tools in the Modify tab of the Command Panel. While in sub-object mode, you can directly manipulate the geometry and change it using any of the modeling tools. To exit sub-object mode, click the active icon again or press 6. In the next movie, we'll look more into how to make an animation.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
You can view an animation by dragging the time slider along the trackbar or by clicking the increment arrows for more precision. To adjust the number of frames you can see in the timeline, drag with the right mouse button while holding Ctrl and Alt. You can animate using either Auto Key or Set Key mode. When either mode is active, the button time slider, and the border of the active viewport all turn red. Here we will use Auto Key, which automatically records any changes you make in the scene. A new key is inserted automatically each time you make a change. In the command panel, the Motion tab provides tools to adjust the motion of the selected object, such as timing and easing in and out. Not all actions depend on keyframes. Particle systems add effects to your scene that change over time. In this case, the timing is set in the Modifying tab. This adjusts the number of frames that the particles are emitted for. Move the time slider or press play to see the resulting animation. In the next movie, we will look more into how to texture surfaces with materials.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
Materials are created and applied to change the surface appearance of objects, such as the color, pattern, shininess, and opacity. To create a new material, double-click on the material or drag it from the Material Map browser into the active view. To assign a material to an object, drag a connection from its output socket onto the object or click the Assign Material to Selected button. To adjust the material's components, double-click its node. The parameter editor lists all the components related to the selected material. For example, the diffuse parameter lets you adjust the color. To enhance the appearance of a material, use maps. To see a mapped material in the viewport, click Show Material in Viewport. 3ds Max supports many renderers, including Scanline, Art, and Arnold, as well as many optional renderers sold separately. Some materials are designed to work best with specific renderers and are only available when that renderer is active. Changing the assigned renderer will change what materials are presented in the Material Map browser. In the next movie, we will look at how to produce a rendering of your scene.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
If your scene is too bright or too dark, it may be because your exposure settings are incorrect. New scenes are lit with 2 default hidden lights. As soon as you add a light, the default lights disappear. As a result, adding a single light to a scene may actually cause the scene to get darker. For interior renderings, make sure that your lights are turned on and that the scale of your scene is correct. Use photometric lights and the sun positioner for realistic lighting with Art and Arnold renderers. You must explicitly choose the active renderer. The default Scanline renderer is the fastest, but for more accurate renderings and to access more materials, use Art or Arnold rendering. Make sure you are using an environment map when using the Art or Arnold renderers. Use Arnold materials or materials from the Autodesk Materials library for more sophisticated results. For more complete tutorials and sample scenes, visit the Learning Path online.
Repeat the lesson and make notes where necessary.
Presented here is the workflow for this particular project. You can see I've used primitive shapes, a box, a sphere, a cylinder, and a spline. When you first open up the sphere, you'll find that it comes at a different number than this. It might be 64, but it could be 22. I then converted that to give it a smoother overall look. I then used a Max script, or you can download a rock or similar shape, which I used to cut out using the Pro Boolean tool. Right click, editable poly, and let's go down to the compound objects and Pro Boolean, and then you can cut the shape out, as you can see in this next sphere here. Then on the final sphere, I basically did some modifications where I used tools like extrude and bevel.